Let's introduce you to Rory O'Keeffe, who is the author of a book on the crisis in Libya, actually called The Toss of Coin, Voices of a Modern Crisis, in our central London studio, as you see. Rory O'Keeffe, a very good morning to you. You've talked and brought together lots of stories from people who are fleeing persecution, fleeing conflict, sometimes seeking a better quality of life. What are the common denominators that come through?
Well, in almost all cases, people have fled war, they fled terror, they fled oppression, they fled torture. In some cases, there has been too little food for them to eat, they have no access to basic medicines. What they're attempting to do is find somewhere safe to live and to stay. The vast majority of those people do not necessarily intend to enter the European Union, but particularly now with the situation in Syria and the ongoing civil war in Libya, they find that there simply aren't places for them to go. The European Union is a place where they hope that they can find a safe place to live, albeit for a relatively short period of time. Most of them hope. One of the common denominators is that the vast majority of people hope to be able to return home as soon as it's safe to do so.
Yeah. Is it just about safety? I mean, it really can't just be about safety, can it? Because, I mean, for instance, if you were a Syrian and you were looking just to be safe, you would leave Syria and the first country you'd come to would be Turkey, where you would suppose you'd be quite safe. But there are not necessarily the opportunities in Turkey. So it's not just about safety, is it?
Well, I think we need to understand the actual scale of what's happening in Syria. There are estimated to be 11 million people who have been forced to leave their home. The vast majority of those, 7 million people, are still in Syria. And of the 4 million people who have left Syria as a result of the conflict, what we see is that more than 2 million are in Turkey, 1.125 million are in Lebanon. This means that 1 in 5 people currently in Lebanon is a Syrian refugee, and 690,000 are in Jordan, where the third largest city, for want of a better word, is actually a refugee camp full of Syrian refugees. The vast majority of people have moved to Turkey, Lebanon and Jordan, if they've left the country at all. What we've seen is that 250,000 or so people, including people from sub-Saharan Africa who've come through Lebanon, and obviously a large number of people who've come from Syria through Turkey, have found that, yes, it's impossible for them to find a safe place to be and a job to do. And what they see is that the European Union can potentially take in some of those people. 250,000 people, for example, compared to the 508 million people.
Rory, why is it the European Union specifically? I mean, we're in danger of conflating a couple of quite different stories here. Libya is a different situation, obviously, from Syria. There are some commonalities, it goes without saying. But the people you're talking about from sub-Saharan Africa, you'll get some people, we've had some people writing in saying, look, why don't they apply to some of the Gulf states? This is about a safe birth and an affluent lifestyle. There's money in those countries, and yet, you know, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Kuwait, UAE, have not been extending any kind of welcome to refugees like that. So it falls to Europe, and as you rightly point out, Jordan in particular, and Turkey to do the lion's share of the heavy lifting.
Well, I think we need to attempt to talk about this in a slightly different way. Most people in sub-Saharan Africa are not fleeing for a more affluent lifestyle, They are fleeing conflict. When we look at the fact that people are fleeing Eritrea, where there is mass conscription into the armed forces, the government is an oppressive regime, torture is practiced. In Sudan, there are large areas of Sudan that are involved in conflict against the government. People simply don't have the time to write an application and hope that it will be processed by Saudi Arabia or Qatar. What they're doing is they're picking up their possessions and fleeing to save their own lives and the lives of their family. Now, traditionally speaking, Libya, in fact, was a state which had stated that its borders were open to people who wanted to come, and traditionally people have left their countries in sub-Saharan Africa, they've gone to Libya, and many of them had settled in Libya, waited for the opportunity to go home. However, of course, there is also a process which exists within Libya where people can find their way to the coast and will attempt to cross to the European Union, which is, we do need to remember, an extremely wealthy area of the world. People are not running in order to earn more money. People are running because what they face at home is so horrendous that they feel that they cannot safely stay there any longer.
OK. Rory O'Keeffe, thanks very much indeed.